I'm delighted today to have with me Mark Cropper, the chairman of James Cropper PLC, I believe.
That's right. Yeah.
Indeed. So it's great to have you with me. I always like to start. First of all, Mark, it's great to have you, and you're sixth generation chairman of a business that has been innovating since 1845. That's a long time. Sixth generation. No pressure. But before we go into talking about business, I always like to start with a an ice-breaking question as a more personal question. So, what's the most inspiring place you've visited, and why is it stuck with you?
Okay. Well, it's going to be a bit topical at the moment. So it's Iran.
Oh my word, really?
Yeah. So my wife is Iranian.
Gee,
Obviously, it was her maybe misfortune was my good fortune in that she was living in Iran until 1979, came back to the UK, and obviously that allowed me to meet her when we were students.
right.
And in fact, we only latterly traveled there in kind of 2014, 15. But with her parents, and we just had the most extraordinary trips where you're in some of the most beautiful places in the world. This absolute polar opposite of the kind of grey green Lake District when you're kind of in a desert
Grey
city
Green Lake
with
District. I thought it
with
was
with, with,
beautiful.
with turquoise, with turquoise tiled mosques. It's and golden sands. It's a really incredible place, incredible culture, and I really hope that we can get back there.
I
We've got
bet.
we haven't been since 2015 because we had a daughter in 2016, and it's just not been safe to go there
It must
since
be
then.
tough for her with all of the instability out there at the moment, I guess.
Yeah, well, fortunately, her family her parents are back in this country, but yeah, she's still got family there. I mean, it's
Yeah.
I think they're okay, but it's pretty hard finding out what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, my son's flying off to Singapore next week and sorting out flights so that they don't end up in somewhere they shouldn't, like Doha or somewhere.
Yeah.
It's quite worrying, isn't it? Okay, so who's had the biggest influence on the way you think and lead today?
Oh goodness, I'm gonna need a bit of time to think about
Is it your dad?
that. No, it's not my well, I would say definitely not my dad, but no, I that's a really good question. Um sorry, you're gonna have to edit out me kind of thinking about it.
It's all right. It's okay.
Um I don't know. I think probably I think I've learned for a lot of people
Mm.
over the years. I can't single out one person. I think the person who helped me the most when I took over the company and wanted to take over the company was a non-exec director called David Wilkes. And in
Hmm.
fact, actually got there's another one who I worked with for many years on the non-exec side called Jim Sharp. And I think
Mm.
between them, it was their counsel and kind of support that gave me the confidence to take on the role.
Yeah, I guess there's a
Um,
lot of pressure on you, wasn't there? To
well, no, I did. I never felt any pressure actually.
no?
I did. I got to a point. I asked to join the company.
Did you?
Um,
Okay.
I got to a point. I didn't see there was not a clear. There wasn't a clear route for me, just because of my own kind of, I guess, background, education, interests. But then I sort of, as life unfolds, I ended up in corporate finance in the kind of mid 2000s, and it was at that point, where I turned to my dad and said, "Look, I'm kind of um, I'm sort of authorized corporate finance advisor now. How about I join the board of the company?" Which obviously he
Mm.
welcomed. And but then as soon as I did join the board, I mean, can you imagine, I was 32. Um, Imagine how annoying I was, this sort of young guy coming. Um,
Questioning everything.
oh, questioning absolutely everything and not being afraid. I'm never afraid to ask a stupid question either. Still not. yeah, and what I found was that even though I didn't have the answers, nor did a lot of people in the business,
Right.
and that was a problem because we were sort of you were okay, but the first decade of this century was not easy. There was a lot of failures in the paper industry.
Yeah. Well, it's not easy now, is it? Let's be
It's,
fair.
not sure. I don't know when it was last easy.
No.
Maybe 1840 to 1890, 1880.
Yeah.
That was the golden time for British manufacturing. It's been tough ever since, and
Yeah.
I've we've got family correspondents from the 1890s wondering whether they should give up, and lots of
Right.
talk about the dashed foreigner.
Well,
Obviously, the
now,
foreigners are our friends now because actually, far more importantly now, they're not our competition; they're our customers. And in fact, there's less and less competition in many ways.
because if we look at the fiber part of your business, it's packaging and it's stationery. Is that, am I right in assuming that, or is it?
Stationery is too narrow. No, I mean, frankly, our whole business, with the small exception of a branch into electrochemistry for coating components in hydrogen electrolysis, the
Mm,
rest of it is all fiber. And it's all about fiber know-how and fiber innovation.
mm.
So it's not just about traditional papers, which span all of those markets at the fine end.
Before we get into the nitty-gritty of the business, I've got another question I wanted to ask you. What was your very first job, and what did it teach you that's still relevant today?
So the kind of, I guess the first job when after I graduated that kind of went anywhere, I was a market researcher
Oh yeah.
for a company called Johnson Matthey, which is a kind of, precious metals and kind of industrials company. A lot of their technology based on precious metals. And I worked in an office in Hatton Garden in London, and actually it was a little bit like being in the office, the Ricky Gervais office as I remember it. But it's all about learning to work with people. I mean, that's
Yeah.
a very, very varied bunch of people. Um, so I mean, sounds like such an obvious thing to say, but coming back to this non-exec director who I kind of probably looked to as my closest mentor guy called David Wilkes. That's what he taught me.
Mm.
How to kind of like
The human touch.
the human touch, and also one of
Mm.
the I'll be honest, and it took me years for this to become second nature. Um, was rather than saying I think or I believe, which automatically I think puts the kind of hairs up on people's backs. You say, what do you think about
Yeah.
this? It's really simple. It's a very, very simple lesson. But, David taught me that. And that allows you to frame anything, anything in a kind of non-aggressive way that gives the other person an opportunity to think differently.
I like that. I like that a lot. That's good. It's really good. So you've grown up and around business with nearly 2 centuries of history. You're the sixth generation. How do you balance protecting that legacy with making decisions that might fundamentally change the business?
Yeah, so I always talk about us as kind of like this ancient business. In fact, we bought a paper mill that was already 180 years. Sorry, we bought a paper mill that was already 100 years old. So we've got 280 years of history. But I always talk about us as being this ancient business that has to feel young, you
Hmm.
know. And I don't, it doesn't, the age, your own age, the age of people you work with doesn't really matter so much as actually how you feel. And if you've not got that youthful vitality, I think that you begin to you will begin to fail.
And has it always
Slowly.
been like that through the generations, or are you doing something differently?
I think there's always been an element of that. I think the family have, and I mean, obviously, we're a public company now. The family group is about 37%, but in fact, actually, we were even less than that from year eight because we sold out to two sleeping partners to bring capital in. So the
Mm.
family have always actually had a kind of, a large minority interest, but we've never ever, along with the other shareholders, taken out too much cash. And that's basically what it means is that, any cash we do generate, a lot of the cash we regenerate, we reinvest. And
Yeah.
that's the kind of key thing. And I think not only have we always followed, technology and what you can do with fiber and the processing and everything else. We've always followed the market. So I'm actually going to grab something from a drawer just right
Grab
behind
away.
I'm
Yeah.
sitting because it illustrates this story.
Hmm.
Um, so what I've got here, there's two stories actually. I'm just obviously people will be listening to this. I don't think they'll be seeing it. I'm holding a piece of sort of light orange paper,
Hmm.
and it's actually an envelope paper. It was made on something called an MG machine, and it has a smooth side for writing in ink on one side, and it's got a rough side on the other that was good for like taking the gum of an envelope.
Yep.
There's two amazing stories wrapped up in this piece of paper, and I'll explain the age of it as we go through that. One is its color. And we have been the, preeminent colored paper mill in this country since the kind of 1850s, 60s. And that continues to the day. In fact, we are the last colored paper mill in the UK and one of only a half a dozen worldwide who are
Mm.
absolutely excel at that. And I would say, even within that half dozen, very few of them, if any, will make a bespoke color as a kind of priority. So almost everything we do is bespoke to the customer. Most
Mm.
people make even if they make color, they make standard ranges. But we got into color for a very simple reason. There was a big problem in the British paper industry. In fact, it would have been global, but the British paper industry was quite a big percentage of the global production in the mid 19th century. And the problem was the fiber that was historically available for to make paper out of was linen, cotton, rags.
Yeah.
And as the paper machine took off from invented 1800, began to sort of take off from the 1820s, this was a way more productive kind of beast, and there simply was not enough fiber to feed it, and it was a crisis. It was not enough. And for instance, the Times newspaper put out an award for £1,000 in 1854 for anybody who could find like a good new clean source of fiber. And actually, it was never awarded because that it didn't really come till about 1870 to 1900 when gradually wood pulp took over. First actually made with mechanical means and then with chemical. But we did something different at James Cropper. We basically bought in dirty sources of fiber. So it could be like jute sacking from the docks at Dundee. I mean, we've got these, again, in our ledgers, the raw materials that went in. I mean, my God, they were anything from dishcloths to ropes, everything in between. And of course, you couldn't make good, clean white paper out of that, which the Times was looking for. But what you could also do is you could dye it with the emerging dyestuffs industry, which was an essential component of the new chemicals industry.
Mm.
And I mean, the first, again, in this drawer that I just pulled this sample out of, um, I've got a sample that's made with mauve. Mauve was the world's first artificial dye, and that was invented in 1856. So all at that same time. So that we basically went into colored paper as a response to a fiber
Shortish.
shortage, and the availability of new chemistry. So that's
Hmm.
kind of like innovation number one back then. Innovation number two, this is more market. So this is I'm now going to explain what this piece of paper is.
Hmm.
And it says on it, it says on here, Telegraph envelope paper, December 1869, and then above it, underlined twice, is the word approved.
Right.
This is the original sample of that we made on our machines here for paper for the Telegraph envelope. And this was a very significant date because 1869 was the year that the National Telegraph System in the UK was finished. It was built along the edge of railways and it was finished. So this effectively created a new medium of communication and that required obviously stationery and envelope. I've got examples of envelopes here
Hmm.
to deliver the message. And we made these envelopes for nearly 100 years.
Wow.
So that was an early innovation. And really, I think there's numerous examples in between when the transatlantic cables, this is for communication, took off. We made paper for, and also again, electrification took off. We made paper for insulating cables.
Okay.
You pregnate in oil and you wrap it around the electric wire, which I think actually still happens in that industry. There's still paper in that industry. You wouldn't associate electricity with paper, but that's the case. Um, and then more latterly, we've got all manner of innovations going on. We started making paper from carbon fiber in the early 1980s. When carbon fiber was a little bit like graphene is now, it was a newfangled thing
Hmm.
kind of searching for a use. And a couple of our directors went off to our laboratory actually after everyone had gone home. I mean, they were kind of pretty techie directors, Nick Willing and John Larkin, and they found a way to bond the fiber because the difference between carbon fiber and any cellulose fiber that's in paper is cellulose naturally bonds. Carbon fiber, you had to find a binding agent. Anyway, they did it. They formed a sheet. We reinvented the paper machine to then, scale this up. So again, our machine technology for that part of the business is proprietary to us. And it turned out that these materials had all sorts of very interesting properties. So we can, through again, it's about the preparation of the fiber, it's coatings of fibers before we make it into the sheet, the weight of the sheet. We can tune a sheet to absorb a very particular spectrum of electromagnetic interference. So effectively, if you've got, for example, an example is we've had customers in the automotive sector where they've got composite car bodies now, and but they have problems with the frequencies from one component like interfering with another, whether it's the radio or other things like that, because a composite body is effectively for electromagnetism, it's see-through, whereas metal actually creates something called a Faraday cage. But
Hmm.
what we can do is we can sell them a very thin, lightweight layer that blocks out that EMI. A similar material can dissipate a lightning strike in a wind turbine blade or on the wing of an aircraft.
EMI, electromagnetic interference.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. So you've got all these amazing properties of this material that really, came out of the craft of paper making. And, that business today, it's about 40% of our turnover.
wow.
But in recent years, it's been really nearly all of our profit. We are turning around our paper and packaging business at the moment. But there's no doubt our advanced materials business has given us the luxury of being able to nurse the more traditional business through quite a difficult patch.
Hmm, interesting. I guess with digitization, that is having an impact on some of the more, should we say, stationary type of products that you've been talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it's undoubtedly an interest. Actually, the interesting thing about the world of paper, if we're talking about traditional paper, the global industry is more or less the same size it was 20 years ago. It's about 400 million tons if you include everything, cardboard. Um, what's different is that a category you'd call printings and writings,
Mm,
so that's really traditional kind of printed matter. That is about 40% down, and packaging is about 40% up. And
mm,
even though our end of packaging, which is, very fine colored materials for the world's leading luxury brands, is very different from a brown cardboard box,
sure.
we've actually almost entirely mirrored that movement. And in fact, for us, we make again, I mean, now we're making less than 30,000 tons a year of paper. I hope we get back up to about 40,000. But, we're so tiny in a niche in global terms that it doesn't even really matter if a market is static or even declining.
Yeah,
We just need to be better than the competition and get a good market share. We'll be fine. There's loads to go at, lots to go at in our paper business. So in many ways, actually, digitization, yes, it changes things just as things changed in the past, but
absolutely.
we can
And you
respond to
won't
that.
you won't stop that. You've been become famous for the whole world of cup recycling, taking back uh, PE-lined paper cups
Yeah.
and turning them back into product. Tell me about that. And has that scaled? Has that been successful for you?
That has been really successful for us. It's not, I mean, sometimes recycling projects, there's a lot you read about in the press, and they're just greenwashing because the kind of the scale of the impact is, if you actually do the maths, it's sort of just a nice story, which is, look, I'm not against nice stories, but this is far from that. It's much more real than that. The reason we did it was there was a pretty um, strong and quite difficult spike in the price of pulp over 15 years ago now, and it kind of hurt us. We couldn't pass on the price increases quickly enough. It hits your bottom line. And, on the back of that, and again, this is also a theme for me, well, not running the business, but being on the board since 2006. If you can reduce the impact of the things outside the business you can't control, you're just going to be in a better place. So we wanted to reduce our reliance on pulp and the pulp, commodity cycle. So we thought, right, we need other sources of fiber. We want recycled fiber. We also want recycled fiber from a source that, again, doesn't follow the commodity cycle. And we identified that in a coffee cup, of course, the whole, again, coffee culture was, I mean,
Really?
both of us will remember a time when there wasn't coffee culture, but, that was, taking off 20, 25 years ago in particular. And, um, we identified that coffee cups were 98% really good quality virgin wood pulp. 2% plastic was very difficult to get off. And over a period of about 4 years and £5 million later, we refined a sequence of processes. None of them were ours. They weren't necessarily proprietary information, but actually the way we put them together
Mm.
enabled us to strip off that plastic and have a clean stream of recycled fiber, and in fact, even a clean stream of plastic. So we even sell on the plastic that comes off.
Do you?
Um,
Okay.
and that, again, that gets recycled as well. And since those, just to kind of emphasize that this is real, we have recycled something like 6 billion coffee cups.
Wow. Okay.
And there is a caveat to that because when we started this, we started by first by recycling the industrial, byproduct waste. So this is, when you cut a coffee cup out, all the trimmings on the side. So again, we work with the manufacturers of the cups to get hold of that and get it back. I mean, otherwise they had to put it to landfill. So, that was good for them. But then because we had the process, we could then, with government, help them put together plans to get used cups being recycled more widely. And that, frankly, it's taken year. It took years.
Yeah.
This we launched this plant in 2012. The Queen opened it in 2013. And it was only a few years after that that we really began to get the used cups coming back in bulk. And that's an amazing partnership between the coffee brands, the waste, industry, and so on. And that continues to that day. It works
And
well.
that'll grow, will it? That'll continue to grow.
That will, again, I think we're up to about 20% of the fiber we use. I mean, again, we're looking to other sources of waste fiber. For me, a real holy grail actually is going back to where the industry got its fiber from in pre-industrial times, which is
Hemp.
clothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, So recycling textile waste, we are doing a little bit of that
Okay.
with recycled denims in some of our ranges, for instance. But the holy grail in the textile industry is finding a method to separate cotton from artificial fiber
Mm.
because nearly all clothing is a mixture, even whether it's elastane you know in a trouser material, or in fact the nylon thread that frankly holds all our clothing together. You've got both in there, so you need to find a way to strip it out. We do have ways of doing that. We think we can do it, but we're still at the point where the technology and the economics are not quite there.
What
Um,
about alternative fibers like miscanthus, for example, which of course is grown in the UK? Would you look at things like that, or do you look at those kinds of input materials?
um, we certainly can. The truth is that they're generally not cost competitive with wood pulp.
Mm,
That's the issue. So unless you've got a customer that says, you know what, I want, for instance, I mean, example, paper that's got hemp in it.
mm,
They're willing to pay more. Of course, we can do it.
mm,
Um, but most people are quite price sensitive on something like that, unless they've got a particular story to
mm.
tell. Having said that, and again, I've been actually having some conversations, and even in the last few days, um, fibers like flax and hemp, they're wonderful. They can be grown in a much broader range of kind of climates than
Yeah.
cotton. They require a lot less water in their cultivation. There's much less pollution overall. And I'm absolutely sure that there is a future for us using those kind of materials in our business. It probably won't be for traditional paper.
Mm,
It might well be for something that's somewhere in between our paper business and our advanced materials business.
mm.
Um, and it actually could even be for molded components
Okay.
using
Yeah.
our color form technology.
Yes, because you're making 3D packaging as well, aren't you? You're
That was another
thermoforming.
innovation we started about 10 years ago where we thought we wanted to again have another leg to the business, and our innovation team came up with the idea to mold um, paper to form shapes, and particularly to replace plastics in packaging. What was interesting there, and again, this says a lot about the incredible properties of cellulose. When we started that, we thought we could only do it with some kind of, resin additive or something, something effectively to give some kind of structural stability to the material. But pretty quickly, we realized that under the right combination of heat and pressure,
Mm,
you can create, some really amazing things. And
Mm.
again, what we've done there, I mean, with that industry is we've very much gone for the absolute top end where effectively, we're making shapes that are crisper and more engineered and also actually available in any color, which are all things that no one else can do or not do easily.
So these are premium markets,
Yeah,
cosmetics,
it has to be.
spirits. Yeah. There's an awful lot of sustainability messaging, and you referred to greenwash earlier, which is quite a hot topic. There's a lot of sustainability messaging in packaging materials now, particularly on the back of PPWR and EPR. What do you think the industry, how is it kidding itself, in your opinion?
Well, I don't, I actually think it's an opportunity for the paper industry. I mean, actually, what is quite interesting is if you follow the stats of plastic, so plastic is kind of like, probably should feel a little bit sorry for our colleagues in plastic. I mean, because, it's had a bad rap.
Mm.
But if you want to know about what the world really thinks about plastic, look at the numbers. The amount of plastic being used is
You're
not,
going like that.
it's not, it's not going down, it's going up. So this is, and actually it is a wonder material. Um, Yeah, so I know. I think that I think paper is an amazing material. Actually, compared with plastics, it is grown from a renewable crop.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now there are a couple of things you need to really play a close eye on. One is actually how you grow that crop, and there's doubtless, there's some alternatives are better than others, and obviously there's lots and lots of accreditation schemes which has stopped the worst of, I don't know, things like virgin forest being cut down and so on and so forth.
Mm.
Um, the other thing, again, I'm conscious of is that um, we're an energy intensive industry. We do have as much renewables as we can get on our site, actually, through a community energy company we set up. So that's all good, but it's still a tiny percentage.
Mm.
So the majority of our energy comes from natural gas.
Right.
We do have a very clear idea about how we would decarbonize completely through electrification.
Okay.
Um, and in fact, we'd even started, preparing some of the site for that, but finances have meant we've had to delay that.
Is that from a solar source or another source?
It's about importing. I mean, we would be importing electricity.
Okay.
We're generating as much as we can locally. And we can definitely do a lot more of that. But no, we'll be importing electricity. But we'll be, for instance, I know would make a contract with a wind farm or and so on and so forth. So we would be doing that. But electricity is we've mapped all the different routes that you can you know take an energy and actually directly um, using electricity, involving things like heat pumps and other technologies. That's the way to go.
I've got two clients that just in the last 6 months have installed solar panels across their entire roofs. They're only able to get about 25% of the power from that source, but it's a
Oh,
big
solar
commitment.
panels. I mean, they are a total no-brainer
Mm, mm,
now.
yeah.
And when we're ready, we've actually got planning permission for a 12-acre solar plant in a kind of natural bowl you can't see from any direction.
I don't mind the look of them actually. I think they're fine.
Um,
So, talking about personal leadership and pressure, what decisions have you made as chairman that have kept you awake at night?
um, I mean, I was very worried about the business 2 years ago. I mean, that was keeping me awake at night. I generally sleep very well, so I'm fortunate, but it's beginning to invade my dream space, which is not a good. Not a good experience, but gladly. It's interesting. I actually had the reverse dream a few months ago where, it was sort of, fist pumping, everything was going to be okay. So I thought that was quite a nice, drew a line under that particular period. But yeah, and I mean, that was just the most basic business worries in that we had a drop off in all at the same time across nearly all of our business, both on the advanced materials side and paper and packaging. And some of that actually was technology led on the advanced materials side. So we'd grown very quickly in connection with a branch of the renewable industry called fuel cells.
Mhm.
A lot of those programs, I think, around the world came to an end, and actually that was a big drop off in that. At the same time, we actually also then had a post-COVID drop off. And if I explain that, what happened in the paper industry after COVID is that there was this incredible restocking. There was a moment in 2022 when we were quoting something like 9 to 12 month lead times.
Mm,
A negative at that was, of course, you think, great, let's make some hay.
mm,
But in the midst of all that, Putin invades Ukraine and the price of everything goes through the roof. So, in fact, it was the devil's own job just to kind of keep the margins where they were, and we managed to. Unlike actually, quite a lot of paper mills. There was a wave of actually closures in
yeah.
very sadly of some companies that were even older than us in the UK.
Mm,
Tragic. Really? So we had that restocking spike, and then in the kind of autumn winter of 2023, um, there were worries about Israel and Gaza. There were worries about the US election. Probably more importantly for us, Chinese luxury consumption. The tap was turned off with new kind of rules around gift making and things like that. And it all came together and we saw a dramatic drop off. And of course, the other thing is in any market, as soon as there's a problem, everybody battens down the hatches. So they stop ordering, but then they run down their stocks as well.
mm.
And that was very, very scary. Um,
How do you feel about the
Korea.
next, how do you feel about the next year or two ahead?
Well, it's interesting. So I think if I actually feel quite differently. I'm glad to say, but it won't be by accident. And if there's one, I'm not saying it doesn't keep me awake at night, but I'm the non-exec chair of our business. Although, frankly, as the kind of biggest shareholder and the kind of leader of the family group, my level of responsibility is some ways, it's not, I'm not just a hired hand. So it
Mm,
is slightly different. But really, my most important job and the thing that, has to tax me is ensuring that we've got the best leadership that we can.
mm,
And, that can be really problematic at times. I've had, many occasions when I mean, ultimately, um, it's my real job to appoint the CEO, and then the CEO will appoint, their team. But, you know, we've had to make a lot of people changes.
yeah,
You
I can
do, you
imagine.
do not do that lightly.
Mm,
And I'm very fortunate to be working with a team now that I think the longest serving member of our executive team has been there for just over 2 years. So not very long.
but
But
yeah,
I'm working with a team now that is very, very responsive to the trading environment.
how would you describe your style of leadership?
Very consensual. Um, Very trusting. Um, until don't break my trust though, you know. So I think that because that, that's it only works like I mean, I think you can only work with people. You can't just in life, I mean, whether it's friends or business colleagues, you got to trust each other.
Mm.
Um, so I think for me, I'm very, very open and just let people get on with it. Um, I'm extremely respectful of the reporting line. That's actually a real
Yeah, so you
lesson
don't
I
do all
tell
this.
anybody. No, because actually there's a somebody in my position could wreak havoc in our kind of company. Because I
Mm.
live here. I mean, I literally live above the shop, as we always
Right.
have as a family. I could be in there every day, kind of like messing around. But then actually, I mean, I wouldn't have the level and quality of management I have because I think they'd go because they
Well,
want.
yeah, they would
So
feel
I'm very,
undermined.
very, I am very respectful of the reporting line. So if I have a concern, I will take it, I will not even a concern, anything, I'll say, I'll start with our CEO, David, and say, David, had this idea. Shall I speak to so and so? Would you like to? How do you want to handle it? So there's no kind of like situation where, because there's nothing more annoying than because than you interfering and then somebody hearing secondhand that you've said or done something.
So if we were to sit down in 10 years' time, what does James Cropper look like?
So so there's a sort of there's always there's two ways of looking at anything. One is the sum of the parts, and the other one is kind of like where do you want it to be? So your kind of your vision, and the vision needs to be somewhere above the kind of sum of the parts, just to kind of drive the business forward. So I think our um again, if I just talk turnover, um, I would certainly see that we would be more than double our turnover.
You're what, about 100,
We're 100 million now. I would have thought
right?
we should be a 200 million pound business. And of that, um, at least half of it should be our advanced materials side.
Right. Mm.
Um, More importantly, and again, in a much shorter period, our paper and packaging um, business needs to return to profitability. Um, and again, with the right kind of approach to markets and again, even innovation in that business. I mean, I would call our paper business an advanced materials business.
Mm.
It's not a normal paper business, but that business should and could be much more profitable. It will never be that have the margins of the advanced materials business, but I think both should be, very successful. And again, you asked me about, the world and looking forwards. We're still here because we have world-class materials that world-class people need. And that's not going away, frankly, whether we're in, packaging for luxury retail or in aerospace or, very topically in defense, as we
Yep.
are then, and factually, probably more topically and importantly, in renewable energy.
Mm.
We've got materials that the world needs. We have to work hard to earn our kind of position to supply them. But that demand is not going to go away. And if anything, actually, we're tapping a very, very small percentage of the potential that we could tap.
Sounds exciting. So, what's one uncomfortable truth about the future of materials that most people aren't ready to hear?
Well, I think we've got to be really open about the impact of what we do. And for us, actually, the carbon footprint is the obvious one. Um, it's there. It kind of, it exists. We need to wean ourselves off that. Um, at the moment, and again, this is sort of feeds into a kind of national debate now about kind of net zero goals. Um,
Mm.
there needs to be a balance between carrot and stick. We're looking forward. We're seeing a hell of a lot of stick. We're going to be, you know, punished pretty severely by carbon taxation if we don't do something. Well, maybe that's the reason to do it, but at the same time,
Yeah, get ahead of the
I'd
game.
rather spend our money for obviously we've got limited resources. I'd rather spend the resources making that change rather than paying the taxation because we haven't been quick enough. Yeah, so I mean, that's the reality of the world we live in. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Um, I don't know.
So my last,
Doubtless there will be, but maybe you can help me here.
well, I think we are seeing a huge change in consumer behavior. I don't know whether you saw the documentary yesterday evening, which was on Netflix, called the Plastic Detox. I think the consumers now starting to realise that all of us are beginning to realise the price we're paying for being so dependent on hydrocarbons
Yeah.
and single-use plastics, particularly. We've woken up from and you said it earlier, plastics are a fantastic invention. They are, and they still are. Oh, they were, and they still are, but there's
Yeah.
a price to pay,
Yeah.
and we have to transition somehow to more renewable
No,
alternatives.
yeah, I mean, I think, and again, we're a sort of because we're still making material, we're making real materials for a material world, and I say that because so much of the talk in the world now is about AI and
Mhm.
life through a screen,
Yeah,
which
and look
almost
at us now.
yeah. Well, there we are. No, no, listen, it's incredibly powerful, but we still make um real materials, and we've just got to frankly use those really carefully and sparingly, and all of us need to consume less. Actually, there is we're already going through some of this reckoning. I mean, it's hard to kind of
Yeah,
environmentally, of course. um I think the kind of challenge for the politicians, I mean, I actually think the politicians of our time are kind of ducking this, but certainly the politician of the future is, how do you manage nations with economies that are, either static or in decline, because this is going to happen with falling populations, and keep the money for the good stuff, the education, the health system, the incredible health system that we enjoy in our modern world. And there is so much good happening in our modern world that it's kind of
mm,
like, a lot of that's overlooked. This is an
yeah,
incredible time to be alive.
it is
It
a
really
life
is.
of abundance.
We should not wish ourselves away from this moment,
Mm,
even if it's a shock to many of us who've lived our whole lives in a very peaceful, stable world, and that seems to be changing. It's still an incredible time to be here on planet Earth. There's lots of problems, but there's lots of things we can do about it.
I totally agree with you. So my last question is, what book has had the most influence on you?
Oh, goodness. I do read a lot of books. Do you know, I've sort of, I avoid kind of, business kind of self-help books because I think I find them, yeah, they're just too boring. But there was one that was written in the 1990s by this um, German management consultants. I think he's called Professor Simons, and it's
Mhm.
called Hidden Champions.
All right.
And it actually, what it does is sort of chapter by chapter, it maps out why are these German Mittelstand kind of mid-sized manufacturing companies so successful.
Mm.
And it's it's a lot of it's really simple, and a lot of it's very different from how the corporate world that all of us see every day is managed. People are working in jobs for decades. The leadership's often there for a very long time. Those companies are often like us, based in rural areas where there's more kind of dependency between the kind of employer and the employed. There's more of a kind of need for an ecosystem around that. There's more stability around that. They're very focused on their kind of customers and market needs. So it's almost like a blueprint for kind of how to have a long-term sustainable business, and it feels quite different from any other book. So
Well,
take a look
I
at it.
shall I shall pick it up and have a read. Mark, thank you so much for giving up your time, sharing some of your stories. I know the listeners and voyeurs will enjoy, but thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Brilliant. Okay, I'm actually got to go. I've got 45 seconds to my next call, so that's
That
good timing.
timed perfectly.
Yeah.